this thing on? Hello, and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Rashee Rice of the MHRT Network. Thank you all for joining us live this evening. Trust me when I say we have an incredibly unique show planned for you today. Again, bringing you some information that I do think is going to be somewhat difficult to obtain, certainly on most other sports podcasts, with regards to what we have to offer tonight. We're going to dig into the Rashee Rice situation again. Obviously, some major news coming out over the course of this week, and that's what we are here for on the Wild Wild West podcast, which is giving you the rundown of the AFC West, where the West side is the best side. And this is obviously some pretty, major news, and I don't really care what team you're a fan of. It just so happens that this is landing squarely on the shoulders of the Kansas City Chiefs, and in turn, Alex, you and I will be largely, I think, taking the lead on this one to kind of go into those
in the
details.
Wheelhouse, baby.
Right within kind of
Football
what we do.
And law.
And so, anyways, my name is Rashee Rice of the MHRT Network. Directly over here is the real Alex Gibbons. You can catch him for the Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast as the season gets started with him and Coach on Coach Defense's channel. You can also catch his articles on Arrowhead Addict. Great content, as always. Down directly below, we have Roberto, who is here representing his Los Angeles Chargers. Is he really? Nah, not really.
Los Yarriors.
Or don't start with me, Rich. The show just started. Come on.
And I am going to introduce Captain has said he's going to do his best to join us here, but he is traveling at the moment, so he's going to have some spotty internet. We are bringing in Tom, otherwise known as T3 from T3 Sports, bringing him in representing his Las Vegas Raiders. Thank you, Tom, for joining us. Here we go.
Shirt up there. Decision.
In case you didn't know, it's the Las Vegas Raiders, as you could see from the shirt. And thank you for leaving clothes on. It's not that kind of show.
Captain Jack watch, right?
Yeah. And so that's awesome. So, guys, getting right into it, we're going to kind of jump right into it now and start covering off the Rashee Rice situation and kind of jump right into it. Tom, I don't know if you caught the show last week. Alex and I kind of went into a few actual hypotheticals, really, given circumstances, and we can really start narrowing those down that we got the information we got over the course of this week. So, Alex, I'm going to throw over to you, and we can maybe tie in what happened last show to what's happened now and kind of say what came true, what didn't, and I'm sure a bunch of stuff came out that you wish hadn't.
Sorry, Alex.
Boy, is that true. I'd say, pretty much most of what we discussed last week, kind of almost immediately went out the window. I think Thursday is the first domino that fell was, Rice met with the law enforcement, his attorneys kind of issuing statements, and then it comes out that he, admitted to driving the Lamborghini that was involved. So that pretty much kind of took out all my defense-minded hypotheticals of, he had very minimal involvement in this, took that off the table and put the old Uno reverse card right out there and was like, nope, it's worse. Draw 4. But pretty much, so that was the first domino to fall. And then we kind of just, I think a little bit more is, I don't know if, too much more didn't develop after that, but that's certainly not the favorable fact you want. But then,
that was more of a nuke, wasn't it?
Is a what? A nuke? Yeah.
That was more of a nuke, wasn't it? Like, that wasn't a domino. Like, I think we have to call a duck a duck. That was basically a nuclear bomb at that point.
That was Oppenheimer, right?
Yeah, I was like kicking over the last domino. They're just like waiting for everything to fall. It's like, nah, just knock it over now.
That was bad. Yeah. Okay. I think just an hour before we got on the show here, it was announced that I think they issued a warrant out for Rashee Rice's arrest, and he's got 8 8 charges right now, some of which, carry 6 counts of collision involving bodily injury, which carries, a 1 to 5 year prison sentence. So, he's got some significant charges now, compared to what, could have been if his involvement wasn't more than, owning the vehicles or leasing them. But I would say on top of that, we also, I think law enforcement released news that there was some marijuana found in the car. I think there is a pretty large discrepancy, though, on the amount, because I've seen 10 kilometers, which would be a shitload, a shizload. He'd be basically Pablo Escobar, like trafficking down there. I've seen 10 grams, which is not that much. And I've seen like 10 ounces. So, it's all over the place in terms of that. I think looking at the charges, that wasn't really necessarily, I don't think it was that much to warrant any sort of, drug or sort of traffic or, intent to sell, distribute type of offense. So I think that kind of answers it right there. But that definitely came out as well as there was.
Well, given Texas, they have pretty harsh drug penalties.
Yeah, but it has to be a lot. Most states now,
that's my point. Is that they didn't even bother really including the drug charges, which you think they would do just for good measure, because even if they don't get them on all the other ones, you think they'd at least leave that in there just as a toss in.
Yeah, but I think in most states now, even if they're or not, like state legal or medical, almost all of them outside of a few have some medical component to where it's like really hard to just, and it's a waste of really law enforcement prosecutors' time to prosecute anything that's not like a lot. So yeah, like I said, I think the charges that we saw with the warrant kind of show that wasn't a big deal. I think there was other, like a $16,500 check was in the car. I was like, damn, I wish I could roll around with something like that. And the season playbook. So at least, glass half full, he's always got the plays on his mind, or they were right there. But that's me trying to poorly shed some comedy on a pretty bad situation all around. But yeah, he's definitely, fully in the fire now. I think it was just him and the driver of the Corvette were the only 2 that were charged. So I think the extent of the police investigation was to figure out who was driving, and that's who we're going to stick it on. I will say, from a legal strategy perspective of it, he has a pretty well-known attorney. The dude is a state senator and like is a pretty high-profile criminal defense attorney, or attorney in general. And I would say that I think that most of the stuff he's released to the media, as well as Rashee coming out and saying I was driving, is all from the mindset that there was probably some deal already discussed or somewhat in place of like, look, if your guy just fesses up and says, and mounts and owns up to everything and doesn't try to do these smoke and mirrors with his friends saying, I don't know, like we can work this out. Because I find it hard for a professional athlete who at least assumably has some kind of money to afford a pretty viable, if not aggressive, criminal defense, would not just come out and say I was driving and kind of just like put his hands out and be ready for the cuffs. So that kind of makes me think that, this will get worked out in some sort of plea deal that I don't think will be overly serious in the long run, mainly because as far as I know from the news, even though he got charged with, causing serious, bodily injury and 1 count of serious bodily injury, I don't think that there's really been anyone that was overly injured in terms of like life-threatening issues or, any sort of surgery or anything like that. I will say, you see a charge like serious bodily injury and you think, well, someone has to be really jacked up. But that's all those charges are all by legal definition. And so it really just depends on how Texas, how they identify or define what is serious bodily injury, which could be just like the threat of death, which obviously driving at high speeds and a ticking time bomb to some degree is, certainly a threat of death and an imminent threat of death. So I think, regardless of what people sustain, it's certainly a serious issue. Feel terrible for the people involved, and unfortunate that someone who had everything going for them, put themselves in this situation. But I think legally speaking, this will get worked out into a relatively minimal plea deal. I doubt he does any jail time, but I do think you see a pretty significant suspension from the league.
So, Tom, I'm going to throw to you quickly here just to kind of get your take on this, since curious as to your thoughts on this. Just I'm going to make a quick comment here first.
Well,
my only caveat, Alex, on this, in response to that, and I'll toss over to Tom, is he did one thing that I think has really hurt him. Well, he ran.
Yeah,
that's exactly it. He ran. And so for those of you who don't know, some of my background, I work in the legal industry, not as a lawyer, but in the legal industry. And my entire family are police officers, like literally absolutely every single person. I just said no. But literally, even my sister married a cop because, why not? That's just the way my family rolls.
Bleed blue.
Yeah, just like
rugby
literally.
Or I guess it's Mounties. Are they Mounties? Is that
no? So I got an uncle who's an LAPD detective, just retired, and then everyone else in my family are Canadian officers, and including my dad. And my dad used to work undercover when he was younger with the Hells Angels.
Let's go.
So like we were.
Well, so he was a big dude.
Yeah.
This is Diesel.
Yeah. So that gives you a bit of an understanding in terms of my family background. So I got a really interesting mix, and my mom is a lawyer, so I have again the legal and the legal side of things on my end here as well. The one thing that is really bad from a police standpoint is he ran, and sorry. Of that note, and in addition to that, there was drugs found at the scene, which compounds running. And depending, I don't know how the U.S. works. I can speak a little bit to Canada with personal experience here. They will treat that as if you were actually impaired while driving because you refuse to allow yourself to get tested. And they will basically say, it is now the burden of proof is now on you to show to us that you were not impaired. That's generally how it works here.
No, it's all the reasonable doubt. So, it just there's not really like a burden shift. It's all up to the state to prove every element of whatever you're charged with. And there's no like shift to the defendant to say like, okay, we have this evidence, whatever it is. Now, what do you have to respond to that? It's more, that's why you see, that's why some defense attorneys will go out there and not even really put on a case and just sit there and, focus on cross-examining whoever the state is. Cause that's, it's the state's burden.
Yeah.
So, I think a little bit different in that regard. But ultimately he wasn't charged with any sort of, hit and run or fleeing the scene or anything like that. I don't know if that can certainly, I think, come on later as further investigation goes. But I would think with the initial facts as we had them, like if that's something they wanted to do, that would have been in here. Yeah. And that's kind of why I said, I think that some of the stuff we've seen happen kind of tells me that there's definitely been preliminary discussions of how to resolve this in a quick way to like get it resolved, and then we'll just deal with what we got to deal with the league. And that's why I think you see these charges like we saw. And, honestly, I think that the state probably put some higher charges out there that they don't necessarily have everything to prove, like I was getting at with the serious bodily injury. But that's more of a posturing of like, well, if we don't work this out, I will, do what I need to do to pursue this. And then you're facing everything, So I think, obviously there's been some some inner workings internally, I'd say, between his attorney and the police that's already worked this out. And I think we're just kind of seeing it play out in a short, drawn out manner. But yeah, I mean, I think we see a pretty quick resolution with a plea agreement.
So Tom, over to you. Curious as to your thoughts. Having seen some of these things play out, obviously with the Raiders in not so distant future, actually, but you've seen this play out in multiple scenarios throughout the league in your fandom here. Curious as to your thoughts on the situation.
Absolutely. Now, this case is not remotely similar to what the Raiders had back in 2021. Obviously, the Henry Ruggs situation, which resulted in death, and of course he's in jail. That was a quick decision for the Raiders to drop him from the roster. Easy decision to make. And then just right on the heels of that, they let go their other first-round draft pick, Damon Arnett, cornerback, because he was toting guns and making threats and everything else. So they dropped him as well. This brings up the whole character thing. Now, once again, this is not it's not exactly the same as you go 20 years ago. Look at the whole Michael Vick situation. What he was involved with was horrific. And of course, he did time in jail, but he was able to redeem himself and come back and make his way into the league. Now, this situation is not as severe as that. Probably closer to the Jalen Carter situation from a year ago. Maybe that on steroids. But again, you're looking at coming out of that. I think, Alex, you're pretty spot on with the fact that they'll work out whatever they need to legally, and then we'll see what punishment comes down from the league itself in terms of how many games he misses. But if I'm a Kansas City Chief, if I'm a player and I'm also a fan, I have to worry about what type of distraction this is going to have on the team and what kind of distraction this is going to have on the fan base, because you already know, regardless of whether he's suspended or not, if he shows up to camp, you know all the microphones are going to be on him and all the attention is going to be on him. And this is not helpful for a team that's back-to-back Super Bowl champions looking at making a run for 3 in a row. And this is not the distraction that they need. So again, if you're the Kansas City Chiefs in the locker room, your concern has to be how much is that locker room going to be split over receiving this guy back in, regardless of what he does to make amends or not, and regardless of what the league does. So again, my concern, first of all, very, very glad and very fortunate that no one was injured. That the Chiefs don't have to deal with what the Raiders had to deal with 3 years ago. I wouldn't wish that on any team at all. But again, he's going to have to step up and account and hold himself accountable. But the team is going to have to hold him accountable as well as the fan base. And I think the way the fan base responds, I think will speak volumes in terms of what's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it definitely is going to be a large distraction, regardless of how quickly it gets worked out or how it ultimately gets worked out. And like I said, end of the day, he's certainly getting a suspension. I think it's a suspension somewhere in probably the 6 to 8 game range. So, while his stupidity, and I do agree with Hannah, like his stupidity could have absolutely killed someone, and his actions could have had way worse outcomes than what they did. You would just hope that someone who's, I think, 22, 23 would bounce back from this and realize like you kind of got a gift from God to some degree, and that you didn't totally throw your life away and, take someone else's life with your choice and then ruin, where your life was going. So, that's why I think I said last week, he's kind of at a pivotal fork in the road. And some, if he goes left, he could just be kind of a blip in what could be a successful life and career. Or, he could continue down the path of going right and probably hanging out with the same people he was hanging out with that were instigating or, hyping up the choice to race on the highway or just drive erratically, and, put him in this position. So we'll see. But I mean, either way, certainly a distraction. And ultimately too, just not what the franchise needs, after, I mean, not needed anyways. Yeah, well, winning a Super Bowl, and not that any franchise needs this news in any way, but I think especially with how this offseason's gone, where you saw him get rid of Snead and probably thinking like, okay, we have Rashee Rice. Like, I don't need to worry about this first round pick on getting someone else in the receiver room, and maybe I can look at a corner that falls or a tackle. Well, now, his actions, regardless, I mean, it's going to be it's such an unknown, but like I said, you can anticipate, and probably at best case, half a season of not having him. You certainly have to, curtail your offseason plans a little differently than what they were, 2 weeks ago because of, a poor choice, and, that took 1 second to make probably.
Yeah. Well, Alex, I've got 2 words for you, which may make you feel a little bit better coming in. And again, this is kind of a fingers crossed for you all, but the 2 words are Xavier Legette.
I was just about to mention too that I mean, not that this should have ever happened, but the Chiefs do have to feel a little bit relieved that and look who's joining us
on today's segment of Where in the World is Captain Jack.
Well, do you know what we know now for sure? Is that Captain Jack's video feed is most definitely live.
Yeah.
Because he responded in real time.
Yeah.
Oh, that comment. Yeah.
It's almost like I think that just
and I didn't say oh. Yeah, I said oh. Okay. But before we go off the rails, and I'm so glad that T3 is here, because I want to say I apologize for last week not being able to pop in. I had internet for like 5 minutes, and I was backstage, and then it went haywire, so I wasn't here. So hey, Tom, be ready, yes, sir.
Okay.
Anytime.
All right.
Anytime. Okay. Because I'll be very honest, I still need to get into Robert's ass as far as verbal abuse. Not get into his ass because that's a little bit too kinky. But yeah, oh shit. Why is this not working? I can hear here. Oh, I know why, because I don't have the whatever. Fuck it. Okay. I'm hearing the sound out of the computer. Yeah. Did I catch it?
Almost.
I think you caught yourself.
In fact, Captain, I think you just did the greatest radio bleep edit in real time that I've heard from most people. So good job.
Natural.
Jack's neighbor's internet is acting up.
Yeah.
Well, first off, again, gentlemen and Robert. Okay, I want to say thanks for being here. T3 is actually able to probably know more of what's going on with the Raiders than I do, because I'm traveling cross country. I'm seeing people, and I'm doing things. I will be ready for the draft.
Running.
Captain, I have a question for you since you're here to add to what T3 was going into. Going back in Raiders history, and this is why I think it's a good segue to get kind of your feedback on this. Aside from Ruggs, which I don't think is a direct analogy to what's going on right now with Rashee Rice, whom else within the Raiders kind of roster of players over the years has fallen into some of the same types of trouble with the Raiders that we've seen Rice fall into?
With the Raiders or with the law?
Well, no, but who has been a Raider? Like who has been a Raider that has kind of got into, I mean, this was reckless driving on steroids. Like this was intentional street racing, drugs likely involved, et cetera, which are all things that, whether or not the chat likes it or not, will come into the potential trial or plea deal. So I think we need to factor that in here. But who within the Raiders Nation there fall into a category like that?
Well, quickly, I would say that not Daryl Hobbs, pardon me, a very good friend of mine, a former Raiders wide receiver. The Hobbs, not Calvin and Hobbs, which was a great cartoon feed. Hey, Robert, look it up. It's Calvin and Hobbs. Okay.
Get on with it, Captain.
Okay, but Hobbs, the Nickelback, actually, and not the group from Canada, Robert.
Oh my God, we'll be here all day.
Yeah, you will, mother. Okay, right here. I'm coming after you, mother.
I'm here.
You deserve it. Anyway, what?
Look at Rich sipping his drink.
What's Hobbs' first name? The Nickelback.
Nate Hobbs.
There you go.
How do I know that more than you? How do I know that and you don't?
You know what? Hey, Rich, get ready because it's coming. Robert, fuck you. Okay. There you go. No stopping.
Well, hey,
there you go.
Look, if anything else, Captain, if anything else, you have to give Robert credit. He had the guy's name offhand, right? I mean, right off the cuff. So.
Well, I will also jump in and remind everybody that a couple of years ago we had a DUI problem with Josh Jacobs. That kind of went really under the radar, and yes, things could have developed a lot more than they did. That got stuffed pretty quickly. And again, I'm not even going to bother mentioning the assault charges that were brought up by the Kansas City photographer against Devontae Adams.
That's what I was going for, DZ.
Yeah,
I'm here.
That was a total crock.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a crock of crap. Okay. Nate Hobbs actually was drunk, was in his car, was in the parking lot, turned the car off, but the keys were still in the car. So technically he had an issue.
Operating.
Okay? But it was swept because at least he did something, not being, DUI operating live, right? Which was good. Like you said, Josh Jacobs, I think it was like right in or after the draft, he was popped for DUI, but it was underneath the legal limit. 3.
Yeah, it was the year after the pandemic. Actually, it was going into the 21 season.
Yeah, if it's 0.15, he was 2 under. If it's 0.10, he was 0.08. Whatever it was, he was 2 points below that, and they gave him a reckless or whatnot. But that was one of those things. And if you're going to go back for Raiders that are having trouble with the law, I give you none other than Mr. Brandishing Weapons first-round pick out of the Ohio State. Okay, the schmuck that is he's domestic violence and done some other stupid, cocaine trafficking and things like that a lot. And I got his jersey signed as. Not that I haven't been able to get rid of it, it's because nobody's hit that space on the prize wheel. And if they do, they said, I don't want that jersey. I'm going to say,
what name?
Your prize.
What name?
Yeah.
I don't remember his effing name. It was a couple of years ago. Okay. I'm losing things.
We mentioned it earlier, Jack. Damon Arnett.
Thank you.
Oh, Arnett. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I got shit on my mind. I'm flustered. I got people waiting for me downstairs now. That's why I said that I would be in and out. Like I definitely would like to be in and out.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so, people waiting for you downstairs.
Do they have handcuffs?
Sir?
I said you have people waiting for you downstairs. Do they have handcuffs?
Yeah, no. They're actually they have drinks and food. Okay. But what I wanted to say, if you're going by Raider lore, the greatest person that I can give you in Raider lore was none other than Warren Wells, who went to prison in the late 60s and was the speedster that Daryl LaMonica used to throw to in those long bomb passes. Al Davis believed in him so well that he kept corresponding with him even while he was in prison. And when he got out of prison, it was like a year and I think it was a year and a half was what he ended up serving. They gave him a tryout. In that year and a half, he totally lost his football speed. And it was unfortunate because he was the speed Raider wide receiver before Cliff Branch and very, very well known. Number 81. He wore 81 before Tim Brown wore it.
That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. Yes. That's what happens to. There's two things you often lose when you don't lose it. One of them is the fast twitch speed that you end up having from your muscles if you don't leverage it and keep it up. And then the other one is the ability to absorb a hit. it's one of those underrated things that football players, rugby players, anyone that's in that contact sport, it's a callus that your body builds up, the ability to absorb that contact. And both things they're big deals. Like most people don't realize just how important that both of those things are in the sporting world. And so I'm not surprised. I'm just not.
Which again, unfortunate again, and again, obviously we went over Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs just made a very, very, very stupid decision that affected his life and the life of the young lady and the dog that was killed in the car. Okay, I would say the only good thing out of the events with Rashee Rice was that nobody was hurt, killed, or things like that. What and by the way, Alex, get ready, brother, because this one's coming right for you. I am sick and tired of Kansas City Chiefs players being picked up for stupid shit like guns in the back of their truck, okay, or X, Y, and Z. Right? That was Frank Clark, was it not?
Yeah.
Okay. Weapons, this, that, and the other thing. I mean, obviously, was Andy Reid's kid had the DUI?
His son.
Yeah, and he like severely injured a girl.
Yeah,
girl.
like badly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will say
and he got out of it.
Well, and there you go. That was my punchline. That was my punchline. All of these guys, up to and including the former wide receiver of the Chiefs wearing number 10, who had various states of issues.
That's true. Yeah.
Every one of them was swept. And I'm sick and tired of it being swept. But I've got it on good accounting, and I do got a lawyer. Let me see, where is he? Right here. I got a lawyer right here. Make sure I'm pointing correctly. It's not this one. This is for Robert. Okay. It's this guy who's the lawyer. If he gets a good lawyer, because I know a good lawyer has already told me, I've already spoken on the phone with him. If he gets a good lawyer, he's going to skate. And it's the way of the world, and it's unfortunate because I'd like to see some of these charges actually stick. Yes, I am biased. Yes, it's because he's a Kansas City player. I admit that. There's a bias there. But I want to see people who actually do things that are stupid serve effing time and not to have the money to buy a lawyer to buy out of it. Like the, the Patriot wide receiver that killed somebody in Miami, maybe a decade or so ago. And it was basically he paid a little bit of a restitution. And he went in the NFL back, the next year? Again, don't ask me his name. I just remember the occurrence, okay? I'm old and I'm forgetting shit, okay? But it's things like that. And these players need to learn that just because they are multimillionaires, and even some of them aren't multimillionaires that just have some money, okay, that they think that their status as a professional athlete will get them out of everything. And I'm sick of it. And yes, it includes players that are Raiders in that. If you are stupid and do something stupid, you need to pay the consequences, period. And that's my rant.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why I said there, talked about, Rice will be at the fork in the road after this. And you see it with, unfortunately, most of the time it's people with money because, that's just kind of how the legal system is set up. People that don't have money to pay for, afford all the various filings and hours that an attorney's going to spend aren't going to get out of it as easily as someone who just has, $20K. But, that's where, the money is certainly the root of the evil of facilitating these bad decisions. So, you got to take this as a hard life lesson and realize you can't do that same stuff, or just think, I'll keep making money, and if this comes up again, I can get out of it. And if he goes with the latter, it's not going to be pretty.
Alex, that's actually the most interesting take, I think, on the situation, and I think part of the reason where I am more aggressive than Captain on this, actually. I'm sick of this nonsense. literally, I grew up with my dad, as I said, but my father is an officer here. He was with Metro Toronto, which is, if there is a city in Canada that is akin to anywhere in the U.S., it's Toronto. And
hey, I've seen Don't F with Cats, man.
Yeah. Basically, I'll just give you a very brief story because it's interesting. So I said to my dad, "You never tell me about your work. Why not?" And he said, "Well, about 2 years ago, I saw an old lady who got beaten in the head with a brick, and she was dead when I arrived on scene, and it turned out to be your son. Do you want to know anything else?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, I'm good. Thanks. I think I'm
Never gonna ask that question again.
Yeah.
I thought you were just issuing speeding tickets. Damn.
Yeah. So how about puppies and kittens, right?
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea in terms of the type of stuff that happens in these really big cities, and it's never good. Like it's like you see like the worst crap that is possible, and this is exactly kind of what I think Captain was somewhat alluding to, but didn't come out and say. But I will come out and say it. I'm sick of having these young men coming out of college that have been treated like prima donnas, thinking that they can get away with anything, and that because they're really good at catching a football or running a football or throwing a football
or dunking a basketball
or anything,
hitting
a baseball.
I'm sticking to football here, but yes, all of those other things also apply. I'm sick of these young men not being held accountable, and I think that accountability in young men and young women, just in general, is an important part of life. I certainly grew up that way. My dad basically told me when I was about 15 that if I was ever caught on the wrong side of the law, not only would he not help me get out of jail, but he would ensure that I spent the maximum amount of time in prison.
Good.
And I knew full well that he was not lying. Like that was not a lie. That was like deadpan serious. And that didn't necessarily change my behavior, but it certainly knew that I had no allies. And so therefore I had to act accordingly. And I was never found on the wrong side of the law. Go figure. And I was an athlete, so I also knew better. So I knew right from wrong. So these guys here, I understand that some of these young men have maybe not had that father figure in their life. And that's really unfortunate, because I think having that stern, direct comment like I had from my dad, I think is a very important thing growing up. However, it's unfortunate that they never got that from any other male figure in their life that could really relate to them. And I'm not saying Rashee Rice never had that, but I mean, I can tell you right now that the thought of what he did would have never entered my mind.
Well, and I will tell you, Jack can probably piggyback on this as well. And Robert, you're probably way too young to remember this, but back in the 70s and 80s,
he's too young to remember everything. He doesn't even remember everything.
Me too, Robert.
Other than
the guys may not even remember this
first name.
That's you're talking like ancient times, 60s and 70s. That's
times.
like
back in the 70s, back in the 70s and 80s, there was a loyalty. There was a loyalty to the team, and when players came in, they took the lead from the leaders in that locker room, the ones who had been there for many, many years. And I'll give you an example. For many years, good old number 63, Gene Upshaw, was the guard for the Raiders, for those who don't know, and he commanded that locker room. So when the new players came in, they were going to get hazed, and they were going to have initiations, and they were going to have to pay their dues, and they were going to have to get their comeuppance. And if those new players did anything untoward from the organizational standpoint, they were going to get hammered, and they knew that. You don't see that too much anymore. You see guys coming out who have the world laid at their feet right at the very beginning,
and they're already entitled.
And you don't have all that hazing. You don't have all those initiations and those rites of passage that they used to have.
Tom, do you know what the problem is with that? Do you know why that is? Is because we live in a participation trophy world.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a ribbon. Everyone gets a high five. Everyone gets a pat on the back. Everyone's a winner.
One over. Alex, that's not you. I'm trying to point at Stink over there, okay?
But I'm being dead serious though. Is that when you're in that younger generation that believed in participation trophies and that everyone deserves to be praised for simply showing up, you lose the accountability element. I use that A word again, the accountability component, which is yes, DZ.
Yeah.
Tom
you gotta have the bully
to an extent. Yes.
No.
To an extent, yes.
No. Tom, I'm going to go a step further.
There's a clean, healthy way to bully, and there's a bad way. We need more clean, healthy.
We need more clean, healthy bullying.
So there's basically
make bullying clean again.
Yeah. So there's a. I mean, basically, the short answer is yes. You need. Let's put it this way: there is nothing wrong with shaming your teammates for being dumb. There is nothing wrong with shaming your friends for making stupid decisions.
And it's sad that we have to label it as there's nothing wrong with it. It should be the thing that everybody does.
I grew up with my teammates, and a couple of them went out and did some really dumb stuff. Do you know what happened to them when they came back into the locker room?
Shame.
Like they literally got told
where to go and how to get filled them with bars of soap.
Yeah, exactly.
Has anybody ever heard of linebacker Mike Curtis? So yes. Mike Curtis played for the Baltimore Colts back in 1970. He was part of their 1970-71 championship team. The year that they won the Super Bowl, they were having a little bit of a downtime during the season, going toward the playoffs. And in halftime, Mike Curtis came in the center of the locker room, and he looked around at every one of his teammates and pointed at them and said, "If you don't go out and do your job in the second half, I am personally going to come and kick your ass right here in the locker room."
And on that segue, I will also say
kick your ass out of here.
Out of Mike Curtis, I appreciate being here, but Mike Curtis was also the gentleman when they had somebody run onto the field, and I think it was during a live game. Mm-hmm. Somebody ran onto the field, and Mike Curtis ran and tackled his ass.
Yep.
Just enough to say it. Gentlemen, I appreciate being here. I will try to be, I don't know where I'm going to be next Wednesday. I do try to make an effort to come in. I appreciate all of the positive vibes. I will be here as possible, but you know what? I'm driving cross country. I'm enjoying myself, and I might even stop by and see Robert in LA if he can get permission from his mommy to be out that night.
My mommy told me not to talk to scary old men.
Well, then
that's probably the line of the night right there.
That is a cut clip right there. You are done.
That's your drop for the evening. That's your drop.
Nice suede seats.
Hi, Jack.
Hey, take care. Tom's got it. He knows what's going on. Best to you. I will keep up. Gentlemen and Robert, have a great
always a pleasure, sir.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks again, guys. Be well. Take care.
Later, Cap.
That's funny. That is funny.
Jack's neighbor's internet had a limited amount of time on it. He had
yeah. But so Alex, just to kind of quickly wrap some of this up, there's a couple scenarios here, and I wanted to discuss one specific scenario with you, which is there's two angles here. Tom alluded at one earlier, and we kind of alluded it before we threw over to Tom. So what if, so for example, let's say 6 to 8 weeks is what's kind of on tap, right?
Oh,
yeah. And I think that's a fair assessment of where the legals start.
Yeah.
What do you think will happen if Rice speaks to the DA and what have you, and they're like, hey, do you know what? Texas is not willing to not be seen as soft on crime. And this is far too public of a thing for us to just turn our backs on it.
Yeah.
We can't have young men setting examples, especially football players, that street racing is okay. The sliding scale here is 2 years in prison to 10 years in prison, and that's for one charge, and you got multiple charges on the table here. Sorry, my man, but like you're looking at like 1 to 2.
I think
what happens then? And by all accounts, that would be upper limits that we would think would likely happen given defense attorney stuff. But
yeah,
if that's on the table, which, I mean, it's possible. I'm just saying it is not outside.
Oh, I mean, it's always possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you're charged with something. There's always outcome. You're going to see the maximum sentence at the end of the road. I mean,
yeah. And
certainly
so
a possibility till it's closed.
And so, I mean, when you're looking at a sliding scale between 0 to 10 and like 1 to 2 is on the table, whether or not you want to admit it or not, you're on the lower end of that scale. So that's not necessarily an awful outcome given where you could end up, right? And so I guess what my question to you would be is, what would the Chiefs do in that scenario, do you think? Your team, compared to most, has been, we'll say, more lenient, in my opinion, in terms of second chances. Andy Reid, obviously, with his son, I mean, I don't even know where to begin when it comes to Tyreek Hill.
He got like 4 chances.
I mean, he got like 4, 5, 6. I don't know. I lost count.
Well,
so,
Tyreek Hill never was like in any sort of actual legal trouble. I mean, the biggest thing was he was investigated for like a child abuse issue, but I think at the long run it came out, at least this is that it was kind of falsely reported from his estranged baby mama at the time. But I mean, I was like just talking recency with him. I mean, it's not necessarily it's an apples to oranges comparison to some degree, because at the end of this, in the worst scenario, we're talking about Rice, going through the whole brunt of the legal system and being found guilty of a more serious offense than what he would typically plead to, and ultimately carrying out some sort of prison sentence on that. I think in that regard, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure he would be suspended indefinitely from the NFL and have to serve his, term and then be able to apply for reinstatement. And I would imagine the Chiefs would do the same and suspend it. I mean, not try to hold him on any sort of. I don't even think you can in that. So, I would think that they would suspend him, and I think the situation to look at with more. Probably that would shed more light on how the Chiefs would probably respond is the Kareem Hunt situation.
I was going to mention Kareem Hunt. Yeah.
Where you saw, like I said, with Kareem Hunt, I think ultimately it came out after the fact that he was instigated into doing what he did, but not to say what he did was right.
No.
But I mean, he got kicked off. The Chiefs cut his ass pretty fast, and the biggest part was because he lied to Andy Reid and the Chiefs about said no, nothing happened. Like it was a simple altercation, and that was that. And then the video came out.
Yeah.
And once that video came out, they're like, nope, you lied to us. Like we're done. And and they had to do that anyways, just because of the optics at that time were not good. And no team that is worried about their bottom line money is going to keep a person around who was just on video, kicking a female against a wall. So I think if this turns to the worst possible outcome it could be for Rice, I think that's probably, a similar situation you're looking at, in that the minute that guilty verdict comes or he's sentenced, he's no longer on the Chiefs, and I would think that the NFL would probably suspend him and have to reinstate, for however long his sentence is.
Yeah, I think and you mentioned Kareem Hunt, that was exactly what I was going to say too. The similarity I found between these two is just the video evidence of it. And to now that we know he was one of the drivers and he did in fact flee the scene, that kind of, and this is kind of segueing back to what Rich said earlier. If the state of Texas wants to come down with a harsh penalty because of it.
No, but Robert, I just to quickly correct, I'm not even saying it's a harsh penalty. I'm saying his sliding scale is 0 years to 10 years. Right. And I'm saying they say 2 years or 1 year. Like that is in the sliding scale of what he's presented with here is actually on the low end of everything, which for an NFL player is like detrimental and incredibly insane, right?
Right.
So, go ahead.
And what I meant by that, but by the harsh penalty, was that I feel like this would be, and I don't mean to say this because it's the Chiefs, but in a way, kind of, this would be the case that the NFL could set the precedent with moving forward, because he was a rookie. He was on a championship team. He was on the best. I mean, it was the best team in football, no doubt about it. If you put I'm saying, and I know this is I'm just speculating here. You throw down a full season suspension for him, that might be the precedent that the league could set for the rest of it going forward. And I think also, and I'm honestly shocked this is something that isn't in rookie contracts to begin with. I'm surprised there isn't some clauses in rookie contracts that are you got to be a outstanding citizen. I mean, not outstanding, but don't be stupid. Don't get involved with the law. You're at least rookie contracts. I'm sure it could be something that applies to all contracts in the NFL, but certainly that's something that I feel like rookies should have on to go back to what you said earlier.
Some kind of clause in there,
right? You would think, right? I would think so.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's all the conduct detrimental to team, right?
Right,
so,
right. And I guarantee you that Rashee Rice's name is going to come up when the NFL does its rookie symposium, after the draft. I feel pretty certain that that's the case, and they're going to lay it out and spell it out pretty much for these young kids that you do anything like that, the hammer's coming down.
Yeah.
And
Jack,
to
jump into that. I said this last week, and I'm going to say it again this week because here's hoping that at least some young players catch this clip or something somewhere somehow, which is, when you are coming up through the league and you're in a professional sport like football and you stand to potentially make millions upon millions of dollars as a result of succeeding even modestly, and Rashee Rice is certainly in that category given the team that he's on right now, you need to ensure that you have at least one dude or two that are beyond reproach within your inner circle of friends that is given absolute and 100% full veto power over any dumb crap that you want to do. Okay?
That would be the responsible way to do it.
No, I'm being serious. And if you listen to Shannon Sharp, if you listen to Ocho Cinco, if you listen to any of these dudes, sorry, that's Chad Johnson because he's actually going by his real name now. But if you listen to any of these dudes that have been incredibly successful, but yet oddly not been involved in the law, right? They were hotheads, all of them, Shannon Sharp included.
I was gonna say, Shannon Sharp
included, man.
He was a menace on the field.
Don't let this color fool you. He was a hothead beyond a hothead, but he had his grandmother.
In the right circle.
He had his grandmother who instilled a certain set of values within his life, and he's like, I am an idiot. I recognize I'm an idiot. Therefore, I need.
Smart, you're dumb.
Yeah, exactly. I'm dumb.
Looking.
I'm dumb. I make bad choices. I need to get the responsible dude in my inner circle who's going to tell me, dude, you're an idiot, and I'm going to put him on a pedestal.
Yeah,
I know.
Back in the mid '80s, and again, I'm going way back again. North Carolina State had a really, really good basketball player by the name of Chris Washburn. And he's a huge guy, mammoth guy with immense talent. And he went to the NBA. He went to the Golden State Warriors. What the Golden State Warriors did was they paid a person and basically made him Chris Washburn's babysitter.
Yep.
They basically paid him a salary and made him walk around so that Chris Washburn didn't do a bunch of stupid shit. And it's unfortunate that even 40 years ago a team had to do that. You think now that teams are good in terms of policing their players, but this is not anything brand new.
No, no.
Players have been off the hook for years, and there are just some that you put money in their pockets and they just don't know what to do. There has to be a certain amount of counseling. People even commented that when Jamarcus Russell was drafted by the Raiders back in 2007, that they didn't have the guardrails in place, that when he came onto the organization, he didn't really have anybody to take answers from and to take guidance from. And as a result, of course, we were in the guaranteed contract era then, but the fact that he didn't have anybody really to handhold him and guide him through all the things that he went through, it's no wonder that he failed.
Right, but this is the thing, right? When you're dealing with players like Rashee Rice, like Henry Ruggs, I mean, heck, even like Kareem Hunt, who was kind of in the early stages of his career with the Chiefs when he went through what he went through. You got all of these young guys that have come through who have been told that they are, lighter than air, can walk on water. And man, you are the greatest thing that has ever happened to us here at insert X. Whatever that place is. Two things can be true. You can be really, really good at the sport that you play at, right? That's over in column A. But also over in column B is that also doesn't mean that you are above the law. And in my opinion, that's kind of what I was getting at when Captain Jack was here in my comments earlier, and frankly, what my dad was effectively trying to teach me when I was a young kid, which was, sure, you're bright and you're very smart, and you probably think you can outsmart the law, but that's irrelevant. No, seriously, that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you are that bright. The point is, there's a moral right and wrong. It's not whether you can get away with it or not that matters. That's irrelevant, my man. Like, stop trying to game the system. It's what is right and what is wrong. For example, a moral compass. Exactly. What is right and what is wrong? Like, this is what my dad taught me. This is what my grandfather taught me. This is what my other grandfather taught me. There is a moral compass that one must have.
My grandfather used to always say, every road either has a stop sign or a dead end.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And where there's a stop sign, there's often a fork. Right. If you're going to take your grandfather's analogy and kind of expand upon it. And if I'm going to teach anything to my kids, it's exactly what your grandfather said, but then say, when you hit the stop sign, there's a fork in the road. And it's up to you to make the right decision as to whether or not to make the left or the right turn. Right? And that's exactly the concept of a moral compass, which is you're going to know, hopefully, with what I teach you and what we go through in life to know which way to go. My concern here with Rashee Rice and my concern here with other folks in football, these young men that are coming up through the league, is they have a rough idea of morals, as in correct and wrong and what have you. They just simply have been led to believe by some of the folks in their life, including some of their friends that are in the car saying, dude, just go ahead and go on the shoulder, man. We're going to win the race. They've been led to believe by all their buddies and all their friends that having fun trumps morality. And that is a lesson that should actually be the one that the NFL teaches their players. It has nothing to do with what you think you can get away with. It has nothing to do with fun. It has everything to do with the fact that you have the potential to earn a tremendous amount of money, potentially even for your family generational wealth. That is exactly what these owners in the NFL have been able to do for their team. Now, while these players may not necessarily get to that level of wealth in their lifetime, which is also fair enough, it doesn't mean that they can't try to. And to have a moral compass, to know that driving on the shoulder at 130 miles an hour, I did that conversion for you Americans. I'm Canadian, so we do kilometers here. But going at 130 miles an hour on the shoulder of a road and spinning a minivan around, which, by the way, is no small feat given the fact that you're driving a compact SUV on the highway, on the interstate. That's not a moral thing to do. It is also not a moral thing to do after you get into an accident to assess the situation and say, I could either stay on the scene and ensure that the people that I just hit are okay, or the other alternative, which, just for the record, for anyone watching, is the not moral thing to do, which is to leave the scene and walk away.
It's the coward thing to do.
Rich, unfortunately, the thing is, this Rashee Rice thing is going to be a story until the next one happens. This is not going to be the only off-season thing that's going to happen. There is going to be another player that's going to have problems, and it's going to be probably something even more serious than this. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that we have a limit to those, but it's more bad things are coming out.
I agree.
And that's what I was going to say with recently we've seen with the Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, they were both involved in speeding wrecks and serious situations as well. I think the one different component with them is they weren't, technically in the league yet. So I think there wasn't as much of a punishment as you saw from that perspective. But it does seem that every offseason there is some situation involving a young athlete. Recency is more to NFL, but with something in a dumb decision in a car. So, it's going to happen.
I agree. It's one of those things that I find unfortunate, which is, here's an example. So when I was in high school, I would have been 17. I would have been 17. Not a close friend of mine, but certainly a good friend of mine, was in a Jeep. He chose to drive without a seatbelt. He crashed his car, flipped it, went through the windshield, and his Jeep landed on him and he died. Okay? So, there's a reason I am the way I am. I have seen a tremendous amount of things in my life, given the fact that while I'm old, I'm not that old, but I've seen most everything that someone could see, with the exception of my parents passing away, which inevitably is going to happen as well, right? So at some point, I have seen a tremendous amount of stuff. I've seen drug overdoses. I've seen friends that have been killed in car accidents. I've seen a lot of stuff. And I'm sure, Tom, you've been in similar situations where you've seen a wide array of things in your lifetime as well. Alex, perhaps you as well, but I know Tom has he's lived longer than I have, and therefore has likely seen as much.
I'm worldly.
Yes, I'm being kind, Tom. And so as a result of just lived life experiences, you've seen a tremendous amount of things as you've grown up and as you've kind of gone through life. And so, so this is the problem, though. These young men, you would think that when someone like Shannon Sharpe, that when someone who is a gold jacket wearing elite level player within their vertical that they aspire to, you got to think that, you got to think that Ocho Cinco, as far as Rashee Rice is concerned, is atop the mountain when it comes to folks that would give him advice or speak to him, right? You would think that he is within an upper echelon. Yes, I agree, Cool Kev. But you would think that Ocho Cinco and these other guys that have kind of come before him, who are giving him advice in these rookie symposiums, that they are at the top of Everest as far as Rashee Rice is concerned, saying, guys, you need to do this. You need to do this. You need, you cannot go down this road. And yet you do this.
But here's the problem. The average, and I'm just saying, I'm kind of ballparking it here. The average 20-year-old and or somebody of that ilk, when they look at people who they admire or people who they want to emulate, they are much more likely to emulate the TikTok millionaires who are probably their own age or maybe a couple of years more than they are, and say, wow, that person's close to my age and look at all the money they've made, as opposed to looking at a Shannon Sharpe or someone who has a Hall of Fame gold jacket and spent years and years honing their craft and making it to the pinnacle, they're more likely to relate to people who are their own age, who've made that fast money. That's what they want. The difference is now we have a lot of people that are chasing after the fast money, as opposed to the slow burn and the long revered career.
But you
Tom,
know,
I have a question for you, Tom. That fast money.
Yeah.
Do you think that dude who's made fast money has more money than Shannon Sharp?
Probably.
Maybe.
No.
Probably.
The answer is no. There's no way.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I'm just being honest. The answer is no. And the reason why the answer is no is there's a perception and then there's the actual. See, the thing is that I can rent an airplane hangar. I know where it is. It is 10 grand for every 20 minutes that I want to rent it for. I gain access to a private jet that's in that hangar. And I can film, and I have that hangar to myself for it's a rental by every 15 or 20 minutes, and it ranges between 10 to 15K for every 10 to 50 for every 15 to 20 minutes I want to rent it for, right? So I can rent it in those blocks. And I can then have outfits ready for myself that I bring into that hangar to claim that I'm about to go to any random place that I want to go in a private jet and film it with my camera crew that I'm paying $15 an hour, which, by the way,
this is like a business model in an area near you, like basically just a social media.
Yes.
Yeah.
Photo booth.
Yes, I know it well.
Dude, that's wild.
I know it well. And
who's
so
paying 10 grand to take some pictures?
And so if I'm trying to present a certain lifestyle, I can present it for a relatively modest amount of money and gain that money back in ad revenue and other things if I can attain 1 million or 2 followers on any random social media platform relatively quickly. But I'm certainly not making $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Again, I think a lot of it is the perception. It's the perception of who these guys follow. It's almost. I'm not going to go political, but some people follow people politically because of what the perception is, not because of what the reality or the facts are. Again, if you can create a good propaganda and if you can create a message that wins over people, it doesn't really matter what the facts are. It only matters whether you win in the court of public opinion that you're courting.
I think with a lot of these kids coming out of college, though, and you guys bring up, the Hall of Famers and the role models and these guys that they should be emulating their game and their style after.
And work ethic.
And work ethic, yes, absolutely. It's a lot of them. A lot of these young guys don't appreciate the old greats and the greats that came before them. And I speak on that because I live in this generation and I see other people and I see the people that, I mean, it's weird to think about. The guys coming out now are younger than I am. These new draft,
and already making money from college.
Right, exactly. And I knew, like at 20, I'm 23. I'm still way too young to know really anything about the world yet. But even I knew coming out of high school, seeing what I've seen, these dudes do not deserve this money, and they have no idea what to do with it. You give somebody who has had nothing their entire life, who had to fight and claw and scratch their way to earn everything. All these people that come out, like, we talked about this last week too. A lot of these students that come out of these rough areas and sports is their only really escape into a better life for themselves and for their families. For a lot of these guys, that's all it is to them. And we start to see that now in other sports as well, where it's just a job and they don't really care about maintaining that image or that likeness. They're just there to put in the work. They're good at whatever job or they're good at whatever sport they're in. They're just there to show up, collect their paycheck, put in a hard day's work, and go home. A lot of these guys don't have the same drive that makes these Hall of Famers and made these players before them great. And, you hear Shannon Sharp talk about it too. And he says, I don't know if you guys have watched the Uncle or the Club Shay Shay episode with Dion, but he says it in that episode. He's like, I don't know, talking to Dion, he's like, I don't know how you do it. He's like, I could never be a coach. He's like, because for me, he's like, I just did it. He's like, we spend all week going through walkthroughs, practicing the plays. I'll be damned if we go on game day and you mess up the play. So it's just these guys coming out of college now. They're just not built like they were back in the day, and it's
a
so
different
sad.
mentality.
It is a different mentality, absolutely, and it's just sad to see, because I think that's where the NFL is kind of losing a little bit, and maybe sports in general is we're not seeing that same energy, that same fire, that same passion that drove a lot of these old players, and what made, a lot of people say, the old ones will say.
Robert, do you know what makes this is exactly what my point is when you hear me speak about a dude like Max Crosby.
Right.
Okay. He has that same
old school
motor of, I'll be damned if you're going to outwork me. Yeah. I'm going to kick your rear end every Sunday, and I'm going to do so without going out of my way to know that you know who I am. You're just going to know who I am.
And I'm going to show you young guys how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, when I'm going to go out on the field, you're going to respect me because I'm going to be the guy, but not because I'm going to tell you I'm the guy, but because you're going to no, I'm going to show you I'm the guy.
Yeah.
You're going to know.
Yeah, you're going to know.
I may not make the tackle, but when you head back to the huddle, you're going to be breathing hard.
You're going to feel it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's exactly right, Rich. And that's something that a lot of these guys don't have, that same mentality coming out of school. They don't want to get hurt, and you see it especially with the QBs. And I mean, look at what Caleb Williams is saying before the draft. I mean, apart from many reasons of why I'm out on him, but to say that whoever he gets drafted to, he wants a stake in the team, or he wants part ownership in the team. What are you talking about? You're a player, and look, I love the team I root for, and I love the players on the team I root for. But you will come as a player, and you will go, and many more will come and go after you, and the team will still be there. You are not going to, I don't care how good you are. I don't care how far you can throw the ball. I don't care how fast you can run. I don't care how strong you are. None of these players are ever going to leave the lasting impact that the franchise as a whole is leaving. And I think that's where a lot of it kind of goes sour, because they think that they're bigger than the team. They root for the and I know this kind of applies a little bit more to baseball, but this is a famous thing that Tommy Lasorda said: you play for the team on the front of the jersey, not for the name on the back. Or I'm sorry, you play for the name on the front of the jersey, not for the name on the back.
Yep.
And that's something that I feel like is just been lost with sports recently. And you do see a few of these kids coming out, and they really, you see the passion, you see the drive that they have, and you really root for them. I know, as me, as just a football fan, you love seeing that passion, that fuel, that fire, where it's like, this is why I love watching Pat Surtain. And I hate him because he's on the Broncos, but he is the living embodiment of, I am better than you, and I don't even have to say it. I'm just going to, like you said, Rich, I'm just going to show you. You're going to leave this game, look at your box score, and look at how much I clamped you today. And like, that's his drive. That's what fuels him. A lot of these guys, they just don't care about it. And it's just so sad to see.
And the interesting thing with Pat Surtain is that he still has elements of his game that I know he knows are not good enough, and do you know why?
And that's terrifying.
Yeah, and do you know why I know that is because there was one element of his game that was not good in his first 2 seasons, and he couldn't quite improve on. There was two things that he was struggling with. One of them he made improvements last season, and the other one he hasn't quite improved yet. He struggles with crossers and slant routes. He does very well in boundaries. He'll kill you. Like, you're done.
Oh, yeah.
Like bye.
Outside the numbers, yeah.
Like bye, Felicia. You're done.
Yeah.
But
Rich, Rich and everybody, I apologize. I'm gonna have to duck out. Maybe a little bit early, but I'm gonna try to see if I can jump in with you guys next week.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It was a pleasure being on. Thank you for having me on, and we'll talk more draft stuff hopefully next week.
Yeah, I'm hoping draft. We're gonna start getting into the draft starting next week.
Gotcha. All right. Well, you all take care. Have a great evening.
Have a good one, Tom.
But Robert, your point is well taken. So there's two things there. One, Surtain realizes from his dad that you're nothing, except for the name. Like first off, so this is where old school mentality I think is really important, which is you're a representation of your family's name, and
especially if you're named after your father. That's like a whole.
That's like a whole. If you're a junior to someone who's already in the league.
And so as a result of that, it's a different level of responsibility, and that responsibility is an important one. And I think that's a good thing actually for many, especially young men. And then with regards to Pat Surtain, he had a couple issues that he had in the early stages of his career. One of them was the aggressive box tackles. He actually struggled with some of those in the early stages of his career, and he made major improvements this past season. And Pat, that didn't go unnoticed by me, just for the record.
Pat, if you're watching this.
Yeah, if you're watching this.
Go ahead and comment. Let us know you're here.
I noticed. And I think that's a good thing because it shows that he's assessing and analyzing himself to say, I need to be better. And that plays directly into what we're talking about here, which is a self-awareness factor of these young players. And the best players have that old school mentality. The Max Crosby, the Pat Surtains, like the there's a whole host of them that fit within that. Oddly enough, I have to actually put Patrick Mahomes in this category.
Absolutely.
Because his brother is an absolute train wreck.
Yeah.
And his
riding the curtails.
And but this is the exact. I hate to keep on using the Chiefs as an example for the good and the bad, or just the bad in this case here, which is here's two brothers. One brother said, I need to fuel myself to become better and always be the best and follow my dad and listen to my father and look ahead and do better and be better and constantly look inwards to make sure that I do better things and so on and so forth. That is a wonderful goal and a virtuous goal and a moral goal. Good for him. Now you look to his brother.
180.
Complete opposite.
180 right there. It's I believe I'm entitled to the thing because of the thing and the thing and the thing and the thing.
And my brother is the best football player ever. I have the same exactly.
And so that's the exact opposite, right? It literally could not be further from a 180 there. And that is
you had one work for it all and put in the effort and the hard, the times, and you had one that just kind of leached off it. Yeah, just kind of leached off the entire way and the entire process.
Right. And so you have one brother who has got a family, a successful career, who is seemingly
set for life.
Got a path forward that is going to be a positive one for him and his family. And then you have the other brother who is being cut out of the league, not wanting to shown. His brother's telling him not to be at the games. He's got scandals. He's got all sorts of things where he's done not great things from a moral perspective. Because again, when you start to deviate from what's the right thing, you start to eventually do the wrong thing. And Alex, you kind of hinted at that to kind of finish off the Rashee Rice position here, which is this is that fork in the road. This is that stop sign moment for Rashee Rice, which is can you look inward, recognize the moral bankruptcy of your decision, and make the needed changes? Yes or no? Are you going to make the right turn and make the right decisions? Or are you going to make the left turn and make the wrong decisions? And this is, I mean, if there ever was a moment in Rashee Rice's life, and yes, I'm going that broad with this as a discussion point, this is that moment for him.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
It just is.
For sure.
I like this. This is the moment. What are you going to do? Why did your friends encourage you to leave the scene? Why did no one tell you to stop and turn around? Why?
I almost guarantee he left the scene because he was probably high and drunk, if not both.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Like,
Yeah.
I'll deal with this later, but I'm not dealing with a driving while intoxicated or impaired charge on top of it.
Right, but that's exactly my point, which is, where were your friends in that moment? Were you really with the right group of people in that moment? Should you be making different decisions? If you stand to lose tens of millions of dollars as a result of another decision like that,
what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing? And then in addition to that, if Rashee Rice was really smart, and I hope he is, because I never want to see a young man fail, even if he's on my opponent's team. Okay. I would love to see Rashee Rice go to the commissioner and say, I really messed up. But you know what? I know I messed up, and I fully understand what I did. But more importantly, I want to speak to the rookies that are coming into the league this year. No, not next year, this year. Because they need to know that I put myself in a position with a group of friends that encouraged me and didn't stop me. And I want to make sure that every rookie that's coming into this year, knows that there's a different path forward. I want them to make better decisions than I did, and I want to help them do it. Now, that is the moral decision. That is turning right rather than left. That is making the right choices. And I would hope that Rice has that aha moment, that moment that he recognizes that he needs to change, that he needs to do the right thing, and that anyone that's encouraging to get behind the wheel high or drunk, or that is drunk or high with him, is probably not the right person to hang around.
And this is what you said too, Rich, this is kind of throwing it back to what we were just talking about. This will really tell us what kind of player he is. Does he truly care about the game? Is he truly passionate about honing his craft and bettering himself year in and year out, and potentially having a chance to be a part of something that has never been done before in league history? Or is he just like, I made it, won a Super Bowl, got a little bit of money, I'm untouchable? And so it's like you said, I don't care who, Raiders, Broncos, whatever it is, even the damn Cowboys, I never want to see somebody throw their lives away, especially when you have everything in front of you.
Yeah,
I think playing in Major League sports is such a blessing. I truly do, and maybe that. It is a privilege.
This is actually an interesting comment. I kind of agree with this, unfortunately, which is, people are more likely to want people that are around them to say, yes, you're the man.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Whoa, man. Yeah, you're the bomb. Than to say, my gosh, you're telling me that I'm not doing the right thing.
But you know why that is, Rich? You know why that is? Is because they know if they're just yes men, the guy who has the money, they get to enjoy it. They get to bathe in the riches, and when it all comes crashing down, they're the first to bounce.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, he should definitely. This will be very telling of him. Is he gonna realize, no, I'm not gonna throw my life away, because it very well could have ended that day? Or like we said, is he going to use it to, you know what, this is my second chance. Thank God nobody was killed. And I will take my I'll take my lumps. I'll take my whatever punishment the league, my team wants to dish out. Accept responsibility and turn a new leaf. That's ultimately, and as we talked, like we said earlier, it sucks, but somebody else will eventually have. Or somebody else will eventually be in the news about something that they did, and as sad as it is, somebody will eventually take over the headlines. So will he? Will it be him again, or will it be you never want it to be someone else, but will he learn from it? You know, they always say, what is the saying? A fool learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from others. So, well, I really don't hope.
Can't be fooled again.
Yeah, exactly. So I really hope, like you said, Rich, a lot of these players coming out of school really look at the situation and really take a look at themselves and take a personal inventory of their friend group.
I agree, and we're gonna probably wait a couple of weeks on this to circle back to it.
Yeah.
Because I think it'll take a little bit of time for some meaningful information, I think, to come out of this. To be quite honest, guys, this is kind of the way the judicial system works, which is you get this initial wave of stuff, right? You get this initial, and then there's nothing, and then there's a bit of legal volleying that actually occurs within these situations, which is Rice will position himself to try to get out of it. His buddies will probably be positioned in a spot to try to take a bigger fall than they may have actually been involved in, to protect their friend potentially. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but I'm saying it's a potential. And then it'll probably take a few weeks anyway for everything to kind of come out. And then the punishment will be laid down by the law. And then the league will then probably be a week or so after that for Goodell and the league to come out. And then we're going to be and Rashee Rice is challenging the league decision. And then we'll be in this, is it justified or not time. And then at the end of the day, he will land with a likely lesser than sentence from the league. And then both the legal side and the league side will be sorted out. It'll just be very interesting and frankly very telling as to where both parties, both the law and the league, where they land, because that'll kind of tell us and give us an interesting temperature in terms of just how genuine I think they feel that Rashee Rice is being with the circumstances and situation, and how serious they are in wanting to set a precedent to make sure this doesn't happen again. And by the way, the term precedent in the legal terms is a bit of a loaded term because it is what everything is built upon within the legal field. Everything is based upon precedent, which is what's happened before is then built upon to what's going to eventually happen in the future. There's a reason why Alex is nodding. And that's kind of where we're going to end it for today, guys, on the Rashee Rice piece. Getting right into football very quickly before we end the show. We did cover off some positional breakdowns. I did think it was somewhat important for us to cover off. Funnily enough, Robert, you gave me a great segue by talking about Pat Surtain, which is talking about the defensive backfields for our respective teams. I was hoping Tom might still be here to talk about the Raiders, but
we can collectively do that.
Yeah, we can kind of build upon that, which is
with the chat.
Yeah, so if the chat can kind of give us their feedback on the Raiders backfield, I'd like to hear your thoughts and whatnot in the chat. Go ahead and
for sure.
leave those comments, and we will pull them up. But for my Denver Broncos, we've made some interesting moves. I think we've made a bit of a neutral move. Thank you, Jack.
There we go.
So go ahead and leave that comment. We'll pull it up for you. Which is the Denver Broncos have made a bit of a neutral move. We've let go of Justin Simmons. For all of the long-term fans of the show that know my feelings on Simmons, a great guy off the field.
You love him.
You're celebrating this.
No, he is the exact opposite of someone like Rashee Rice off the field, in my opinion. He is the moral compass guy by all accounts.
You love him as a player, though, right?
Oh, sure.
Great player.
Yeah. So I kind of look at a guy like Justin Simmons as a bit of a Russell Wilson's guy, which is,
oh gosh,
he recognizes stats that matter when it comes to media, and he plays to that narrative. So interceptions,
that's the big one.
which is the big one.
Especially out the home.
I nailed that, man. I nailed that, right? And it's
A
like
plus.
A plus, right? Exactly. And that's good, but that's a very selfish stat as a defensive back. Yeah, tackles. I nailed those tackles, my man. It's like, great. Well, how many missed tackles? We don't talk about that stat.
How many yards did you give up before you made the tackle?
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I got the tackle.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I eventually stopped him just because it took 15 yards besides the point. Right. And so that's kind of the whole issue here, right? Which is there's A and B, and it's important to merge the two if you're looking for the holistic and realistic view of the player. That also comes down to running backs. That also comes down to some other players in position groups as well. Like wide receivers. You got all these yards, great, but how many yards after the catch? 0. What's your problem? Right.
You got bricks in your cleats.
Yeah. So there's a whole host of additional stats that actually matter, and in some regards matter more. And so I think the Broncos have effectively ended up with a wash. We've gotten a guy who is a better tackler, but not as good at intercepting the ball. We've got a guy who's maybe a better gritty player, but not as good as some other elements as Justin Simmons was. And I'm not as well versed in terms of his off the field stuff, so I'm just not even going to speak to it. I'm not going to even compare A to B. I will let his work speak for himself when I see him, what he does this offseason, to kind of compare him to Simmons to see, if they're equal within the community work and stuff, right? So that's kind of where I'm at on the safety side of things. With regards to the cornerback position, I've always had the same view, which is cornerbacks are only as good as the interior defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't pressure the quarterback, your corners are going to look like crap. And
some corners, though, there are the rare breed of corners, and I believe Surtain is.
I had to post, so that's too funny. He's like, look over here. And
I lost my train of thought. I forgot what I was saying. Man, damn it, Angelo. You just set me for a loop. I'm sorry. Yes. So there is the there is the rare breed of cornerback that is, you just put them on an island and you're like, we don't got to worry about that guy for this game. You're good. And I believe Surtain is one of those corners. I for what it's worth, I believe he is. 4. Yeah, I was gonna say there's only about like 4, and he's arguably probably the best of them. He's just insane. But yes, leaving it to your point, yes, the cornerbacks are very heavily reliant on interior and D-line as a whole. But just needed to give Surtain his props because man's earned it.
There are rare air corners that are able to do either all or many of the things at a high enough level that they can overcome various things. I have to say that Surtain is certainly edging into that group pretty quickly. I think that he's got a couple things within his game that he has been severely exposed at, and I really do hope that he's working on at least one of those this year. He certainly did work on one last offseason, so I have every expectation that he is working on at least one of the others this offseason, because he's not shown me that he can't so far. So I have to give him credit where credit's due. But when it comes to the defensive backfield, they are heavily reliant on the pressure that the interior and outside linebackers are able to get on the quarterback and on the offensive line, because that impacts how well they're able to do their jobs. Are they expected to cover for 1.7 or seconds, or are they expected to cover for 3? If they're expected to cover for 3, right?
You're gonna have a bad time.
You're done. And Robert, to your point, that's where you get into the Patrick Surtains of the world, right? And they're like, I got you.
I got you for 5 seconds.
I got you for 5, right? and it's like, okay, now you're in a different breed, right? Like now you've elevated yourself to that level. But most corners can only do like the 2-second mark at best,
right.
and that's even a little bit much for most,
especially
right?
the NFL.
Yeah, in the NFL, like you're dealing with different levels of people. Remember, they're covering dudes that are at the elite level from a size and speed perspective, and they're doing it running backwards.
Exactly.
Okay, like I don't care who you are. Good luck. Okay,
and they don't know what they're running. They can run anywhere on the field. They're guessing.
Yeah, and they're playing reaction, right? So it's purely based on processor power, in order to recognize what they need to do and how they need to do it. And so Patrick Surtain is in that rare air. I think there's very few people that are in a rare air element in the NFL. I think Snead. Let's just wait and see how he does on a different team and a different scheme. I think that's an important piece to see. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because KC didn't vary their coverages very much. KC really kept with a relatively static style of defense, whereas Denver varied it, especially under our current defensive coordinator, a fair amount, and certainly enough where I feel comfortable in saying that I think Surtain is in a unique group. And Snead, I need to see a little bit more before I can definitively call him in a similar group, right? And so we'll wait and see what happens with him when he moves to a different team and is ultimately forced to potentially play a little bit differently, or at least be the only guy and not be one of the several guys, because let's also not forget, KC also have McDuffie, who is certainly no slouch either.
It's about Pro.
A lot would argue he was the better.
Yeah, and he got less credit than Snead did. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where that lands. And so when it comes to defensive backfields, I think that it depends on your scheme. I think it depends on your style, and it depends mostly on your defensive interior front. Denver had a very poor one, which is why we only have one guy that's really being touted, and that's a guy that's well-deserving in Pat Surtain. But in my opinion, the focus for the Denver Broncos shouldn't necessarily be on the DBs. It should actually be on the D-line, which will then make your current DBs better, and then you can start developing them to be better when they don't necessarily need to cover for 3 and 4 seconds. And I think that's kind of my train of thought on that kind of angle and on that piece. Alex has a different challenge with his team, which is they have had quite good success at the cornerback position in the mid and late rounds even. But they've also got one of the best interior D linemen in all of football, which really
the best now,
if not the best now, which ultimately kind of goes to prove my point, which is a great interior defensive line. Pressure helps. Exactly. Yeah. So Alex, I'll throw over to you and go into that stuff.
Yeah, no, I think one of my talking points, a little preface with Richie's little segue there, but yeah, I mean, in terms of the Chiefs secondary, I mean, they were pretty successful last year. You know, the biggest elephant in the room is the trading of Snead and what they're going to do to counteract that. I mean, you mentioned McDuffie, who played just as good, if not better at times than Snead did, and, you know, was a first-team All-Pro cornerback this last year. And I think them moving Snead is kind of the telltale sign that they are more than confident in McDuffie being, you know, taking over the kind of rover, I follow the number one guy and play coverage that Snead did. So, you know, and you still have Justin Reed, you got Brian Cook, they signed Deion Bush back. So, I mean, essentially the same secondary unit as last year without Snead, which I think, you know, at least is a decently sized question mark for what are they going to do to make up for that lost production. I think the one glass half full thing with it is, as you said, Richie, they have been pretty successful these past couple of years in taking cornerbacks in later rounds that played very key roles and, even were an integral part of the Super Bowl team last year. Specifically thinking of Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson are two that were for sure 5th or later round picks that turned into some pretty decent corners, at least in Spag's system. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in terms of how they address that, if they do it earlier in the draft and try to find a kind of 1B to McDuffie and, let them both play on a rookie deal, and the timing would be right to where you wouldn't have to move one of them, or do they try to just, do it later and find more depth pieces to fill in with these other guys and kind of just have a committee rotation approach to the secondary? Because like you said, they brought back all the same pass rushers. Assuming Chris Jones doesn't just fall off a cliff in terms of production, they're going to get pressure after the quarterback, which is, like Richie said, a secondary player's, best friend. So, as long as they can get after the QB and put pressure on, if they get just some athletes back there that have a remote inkling of a drive to be successful, they should be able to you wouldn't really know that they're missing Snead as much, thankfully, because they kind of planned ahead and drafted McDuffie 2 years ago. But this kind of also brings us back to the Rice thing, because I think if they weren't in the situation they were in with Rice and potentially having to, find another replacement or receiver earlier, I kind of mentioned it talking about that, but we might have seen them, look for a corner in that pick 32 or second round, or, move up into the second round to get a corner or be aggressive, because I think that it's a pretty decently deep, corner class. And I think that we're going to see one or two guys that have had some first round hype fall. And unfortunately, I don't think you see the Chiefs make a move like that at this stage now, because they're still without a solidified answer at left tackle, and now have this Rice situation that impacts other things. So that's why I think, long run, we'll see him probably do the latter, what I talked about, and taking some depth pieces and just some good, probably smaller school, just athletic specimens, and hope that, they can pan out in the system. But, we'll see how that shakes out. But you feel decently good at the fact that they brought everyone back, not named Snead, and got some draft compensation to move on from them, and, are kind of postured the way you expect them to be going into next season.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The Chiefs are in an interesting spot. I will agree with you, though. This Rice situation has
magnitude of dominoes.
Certainly changed things.
It's put multiple plates spinning at once now, whereas you really only had one, maybe two. Arguably speaking, you had 2 plates spinning before, which is, can we take an interior pass rushing D end who we think Jones can take under his wing, which would be well within the realm of possibility.
Yeah. There's still some decently named corners out there too. That they could, I could see them doing something like that too after the draft wave. And you look at Xavier Howard still, Gilmore, Adoree Jackson. Those are some decently named players that I think you could see them doing something like that too. But
they're serviceable.
As I was saying, though, if the Rice situation wasn't here, I do think you see them be more aggressive and get a young corner early, but I don't think that they can afford to do that now. With a more probable than not likelihood that they're playing, half a season without Rice, who was supposed to be accompanying Marquise Brown, in this, revamped passing attack, and now it's not going to be there. So they're going to have to address that early. And that's why I think we we see him take corners later, or play out the free agency market for some of those guys like I named, and hope one of them can fit into the system.
Yeah, I think not the only, but one of your guys' saving grace is obviously, we mentioned it a lot before. This draft is very wide receiver heavy. So while you could very well move up in the draft to take either a corner or a wide receiver, I feel like, kind of like going to what Rich said, I feel like you almost still go with the plan of, we want to draft an interior defensive end, learn under Chris Jones. We use our first round pick on him, learn under Chris Jones, and then you kind of adjust and potentially move back into the second round to get a wide receiver that you truly like, maybe to get Xavier, or if there's somebody, another cornerback that you like, if Kool-Aid falls somehow to the second round, you get a couple picks in, you're like, you know what, he's fallen far enough, let's move up and grab him. So you guys, while this is obviously in a morale standing a horrible situation, for everything, and the whole situation just sucks, looking at it purely from a football standpoint, you guys aren't, this isn't like a killer, this isn't like something that's gonna end the dynasty, but it could be something where you look at it and it's like, that was the beginning of the end for this team. That kind of started the spiraling of things going wrong.
Let me take it a step further. The Chiefs, as far as I'm concerned, have 4 major position groups they need to address. They need to get a successor for Chris Jones, and I see that as number 1.
Yeah.
Even with Rice's situation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. They need to get a wide receiver that can step in right now and elevate as time progresses. Yeah. That's number 2. Number 3 is they need to get another corner to fill out their backfield in terms of their defense. And then number 4, and this is a bit of a low-key one for the Chiefs because they don't use them very often, or at least as much as others, is they need another Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. I mean, Pacheco is supposed to be.
They also need a left tackle though, so that's.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, but
not trying to jinx it, DZ. Just playing all sides of it, looking at it from every angle.
But you guys are in a spot right now where I think you guys can obtain a left tackle, with a free agent. I mean, I still maintain Cam Fleming would be a great option. I have to check to see if he's signed somewhere. But I still maintain that a dude like that would elevate above what you had last year, and you won the Super Bowl with what you had last year. And your left tackle was one of the worst in the league. So, like Fleming was better than that when he was with my Denver Broncos. And so, good for you as far as I'm concerned. And so like, that's an example, right? Which is there are serviceable left tackles that are still, or were at least still available. And then even if you really wanted, you could trade a 4th for someone like Fleming or I'm using someone in that range. And that would get you a lockdown left tackle for this season to then target one next year to kind of fully replace that position. And honestly, even if you have to trade up multiple picks, like
they have the ammo to do it.
Even if you make the playoffs this year and don't win the Super Bowl, you're still in a position where, a tight end next year is probably an important one.
Yeah.
Right? A left tackle is an important one, but you're in this unique position where you have put your team in a spot where you have targeted positions that you want to get, and then everyone else is just churning depth. Like, that's exactly what you want as a football team. Good for you. Most people aren't in that spot, and you're fortunate enough to have done well. And as long as you can continue that on, which, I mean, easier said than done. but you've shown it so far. Your GM has done a good enough job, and
An unbelievable job.
arguably stellar job. Which is keep doing what you're doing. It's working. Thanks.
Yeah.
Chiefs, as long as you guys keep winning, the owners are not gonna ever need to step in. Hunt's gonna just be like, take care of it. Keep making me money and keep winning me rings.
Jack, my comment on this is mediocre. He is 100% serviceable. He is definitely a guy that I would say has that Broncos, Raiders kind of grit to him. So certainly a fit for the roster. I would put him in line with a Moody, like a Netani Moody, where he's got that physicality to him. The challenge is that they each have different deficiencies, but deficiencies nonetheless. And so if you can plan around those, he will be a fit, but he has deficiencies. That's my general comment.
Kind of segueing a little bit into my team's DB situation. It was a rough year last year, man. It was really bad, to say the least. We gave up the second most passing yards in the entire league, behind only the Commanders, and the Commanders had arguably the worst defense in the entire NFL. So not exactly great company to be in. A lot of it, obviously, it's going to be a lot of changes this year. You get a brand new DC, brand new system. I mean, it's basically like an entire overhaul of the team itself. A lot of guys are coming back, so you do get a little bit of excuse me. You do get a little bit of the familiarity, and obviously showing some of these new guys how it's done. But I also think that the current state of this DB room is really nothing that we've really done has bettered it. I still think we're in the same bad spot we were when the season ended. You signed Christian Fulton. Cool. Whatever. Not insane, not a headline breaking, oh my God, we got him, Like you said, there's still some other corners out there who I would not mind going after. Adoree Jackson, I feel like I would love to have him here. He'd be a good fit if the money was right. Judging for what's still in the room, cornerbacks wise, you have Asante Samuel Jr. I mean, I feel like he's got a lot of potential. I think, and this goes for a lot of the players on this defense in particular. I think Staley really messed some of these dudes up, man. I really do think that some of these guys are so much better than what last year's tape would tell you. And I think a lot of it was the system was just so horrible. I even feel like at some points in the season, the guys just were not buying into the system anymore. I mean, you have the GM coming in and apologizing to the team for signing JC Jackson, who, funny enough, this cursed ass jersey, had to wear it today. This is indeed a JC Jackson jersey. Yes, it is. And it's the most cursed thing I own, but you know what? I'll wear it with pride. Just the entire defense as a whole last year was just awful. So you see, I know a lot of these guys, the confidence is probably shot. The team morale, yeah. Throw up that comment that DZ put on that last one.
So DZ said here was willing to was saying what I was about to say. I want to let you finish before bringing it up, but I actually think that what you saw from Staley was he took the complex elements of Fangio
and made them more complex.
But didn't understand the nuances that Fangio also taught as well as part of his defense. Right. And I think it's the nuances of putting the guys in the right position and having some of those complexities that has made Fangio one of the top defensive minds in all of the NFL. And so Staley got the complex component, but then kind of missed the rest of the memo.
Yeah.
Right?
He was so worried about all the complex offenses they were going to throw at him that he completely disregarded the simple offenses. The things that kind of win you games. I don't know if many people who watch the sport. Everything that you watch in this day and age is some modified, changed version of an original lineup, an original formation. It's just there's one key little switch here or there. Everything. I know a lot of people, especially a lot of young people watching these games, think that these defenses and these offenses are so complex, and Andy Reid is an offensive genius, which he is. Not to take away anything from him, he is. But these these things have been around. It's a copycat league, so you're gonna notice when something starts working, because then it almost very quickly will not work because the entire league is now aware of it, and it's like, what are we gonna do to stop it? This is the main focus. We showed, and I love using this example. We showed everybody last season, not last season, but last season when we actually made the playoffs. We showed everybody how to beat Miami. We shut that entire offense down. They scored 7 points, and the 7 points were a fumble that the fastest player in NFL history squirted into his hands, and he's like, "Oh, I guess I'll run with this to the end zone." That was the touchdown we gave up. That high power, that high flying, high octane offense that everybody was so terrified of, we gave them. We showed the league the key to stop it. And what did they do the very next season? Changed everything about it. We're gonna alternate some of these pieces. We're gonna move some of these pieces. And my question is, why? And this was the first week, the first game of the season the Chargers played was against the Dolphins this season. And I'm going into it thinking like, Staley's got the book out. He knows how to beat this team. Go out there, and it was like he saw his success with the year prior against Miami, and he's like, that was almost too good. Let's change it up. Let's completely go away from what worked, and like you said, Rich, overcomplicating it. Not looking at it as just a whole. And this is where I say that, I can't stress this enough, I love the signing of Harbaugh, because I truly believe that Staley just had no feel for the game. I truly feel like Staley he was 100,000% analytics, and I'm going to throw feeling out the window. I'm going to throw instinct. I'm going to throw everything out the window, and I'm just going to go straight by the book. This is what we're running. It's going to work. And you're just never, ever going to win in the league like that. No head coach that is strictly analytical and by the book is going to succeed. You see it all the time. You see some of these head coaches, I'm not going to name names, but some of these dudes get head coaching jobs, and they really don't deserve it. And they are really incredibly underqualified to be a head coach. But you run a little bit here, you have Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, a couple of some other baller defensive pieces. You go and you go to win a Super Bowl, all of a sudden people think you're a genius.
Yeah.
So to make a long story short, and to make a short story long, I feel like although this DB room was atrocious last year, and I mean just downright awful, I really love the bounce back potential because the talent is there. These dudes, Derwin.
You got to wait on that because you need to have them prove that they can play better than they did.
I think they can because Derwin has showed can play better than what he did last year. We've seen him be an all-pro.
At times he has showed it, but then the question is, can he still show it at his current age after needing to adapt to what is inevitably going to be body wear and tear?
Right.
So, I mean, look, we've seen dudes like Rod Woodson have to make position changes. The problem is that Derwin James started at safety. He didn't start at corner and then move to safety.
Right.
And so the kicker here is we've seen some top tier dudes. I'm going to take a Denver Bronco who used to be a former Cleveland Brown and use him as a good example. TJ Ward. Okay. TJ Ward was a beast at the safety position. He was an animal. Okay. The Denver Broncos got the last few good years from TJ Ward.
Yep.
He was awful after that.
Yeah.
Okay. And trust me when I say he was a critical part for my Denver Broncos winning the Super Bowl. Okay. Like I'm not even saying that I don't like him. I thought he was a fantastic piece for the Denver Broncos. Okay. Not even arguing with why we picked him up or how we picked him up. The answer to that is you do that every time.
Right.
However, as guys age, they can no longer continue to do some of the same things they once did. Derwin James, I think, is squarely in that category.
I mean, he's still got some years on him. He's only 27.
I
care. Know a lot of he's also missed games with injury. So I know he's been in the league for 4 years, but he's really only played about 2 full seasons, if we're being honest. So I understand the wear on him and the type of player he is. He's a very physical player.
You're also missing the point. You said he's only played a certain number of seasons.
Right.
Which, if you're being more objective than you were, if I'm coming in as a non-Chargers fan, that would have me calling him injury prone.
We said the same thing about Keenan Allen, and then Keenan Allen completely changed that narrative in the back half of his career. Yeah, exactly. When everybody thinks you're supposed to get more injured, he was able to actually stay more healthy as he went on.
And good for him. But if you're trying to use that as the rule,
I'm not trying to use it as a rule, but I'm just saying Derwin. I will say the one injury that made him miss the entire season was something that he had a procedure he had done back in college that was just to correct it. He had like a screw put in his foot or something, and so this was just to finally just correct it all for once and be for good. And he's stayed relatively healthy the whole year. I also we do have, or I should say we did hire a new strength and conditioning coach, Ben Herbert. I feel like that is going to be a huge part of it. He's going to be an integral part of this team. I mentioned it a little bit before, but something that's always plagued this team, it seems, in all the years that we've had these great players, are the injuries. And it's that this team can never stay healthy. Mike Will and Keenan Allen were a top 5 wide receiver duo in the league, and they played a grand total of 6 games together on the field.
Tragedy.
You just can't do anything with that. I mean, there's the best teams are the healthy teams. The teams that usually go far in the postseason and eventually to the Super Bowl are the teams that stay the most healthy. And that's something that the Chargers have just never been able to do, it seems like.
So my point is, I'm a realist, and I just am.
No, you?
Yeah, and I'll go as far as calling myself more of a pessimist, even more than a realist, which is I have seen far too many players on my Denver Broncos who have had flashes in the pan and simply have not been able to stay on the field. Right. And, one of the best abilities is availability. And the challenge 100%. We have with football players and the Denver Broncos and other players in the league is if you can't stay on the field, then you ain't winning football games because you're not playing the game. And the sad fact is that one other issue, and so just to give you a bit of insight in terms of my orthopedic surgeon that did the surgery on my leg, which was the number one thing that is an indicator of someone coming back to see him is the fact that they've seen him before. And I know you're like, what? I don't understand. Well, the short answer is basically what he's trying to say is, if you've been injured once, the likelihood of you getting injured again is very high. Okay.
Yeah.
Just to kind of spell it out for those that didn't quite pick up on the subtlety there. And so the point with Derwin James is if he was on a different team that had a better strength and conditioning coach and a better dietitian and some other things that may have been better aligned, maybe he could have been a different player in the long haul. Maybe. However, he did not have a better strength and conditioning coach. He played for the San Diego / Los Angeles Chargers. And
no, they were LA, I believe, when he got drafted. Yeah.
But the point is that he had the plague of issues within the team and within the facilities where they were prone to injuries. And I believe, and I'm with you, by the way, so I'm not even saying I don't agree with what you're saying. I'm saying I fully agree almost with what you're saying, which is with a better strength and conditioning staff comes a more healthy and a better team. But Derwin James, because he was allowed to get hurt by a strength and conditioning group that I will go close to going as far as saying incompetent.
Because I would go downright stupid, but yeah.
And you then end up with a player that has been hurt so many times that he now can no longer stay healthy because he's got so many injuries and so many ligaments and soft tissue things that have occurred that he can't stay on the field.
Yeah, I mean so following that injury, that screw in his foot that ended his season, he played in 2021, played 15 games, played 14 games in 2022, and then he played 16 games last season. So while he does, you could obviously make the argument of the type of player he is, the fall off could be just as quick. And it could be something where, one season you see him and he's like, oh, he doesn't look like he's aged today. And then you go to the next season, it's like, wow, he aged like 14 years in the offseason, it looks like. That is a very real concern. I also think that Derwin, just watching him and following him since draft day, since the day we drafted him, knowing the kind of player he is and knowing how he is with his teammates and with the team as a whole, I truly do feel, and DZ can maybe back me up here a little bit, I truly do feel like he is one of those players that he just wants to go out there and ball, and he is going to ride for his teammates regardless. To your point, that could be a hindrance because he lays his body on the line a lot. And
another player for you, George Kittle.
Yeah, and I love George Kittle, but to your point, he just can't.
Sorry, my man.
Can't stay on the field.
Sorry, my man. Like,
listen, I don't want to say like Derwin's gonna get hurt. Obviously, I know it's always a possibility.
He's gonna get hurt.
Why do you gotta tell me that? Look,
I'll say this. Robert, I am the older brother that you wish you had.
I do have an older brother, actually.
No, I am the older brother you wish you had. Because I will always tell you straight. I will never steer you wrong because I don't believe that is the moral thing to do. I am sorry to be the one that has to tell you this. Okay? I'm glad you're sitting down. Okay? Just take a deep breath.
My socks are on.
Yeah, good. That's fantastic. Okay. Derwin James is going to get hurt.
How long will he be out? That's the next question you ask.
Right. And
is it 2-3 games?
It's a 3 to 4 game stretch.
Right.
And then you're going to be in this wonky spot where he's going to be almost ready to come back, comes back halfway, doesn't always do the right thing, so on and so forth. But here's the thing. I have to give him credit where credit's due. He always does his best to come back. He toughs it out and he does the right thing for his team. But the problem is this, that doesn't change facts.
Right.
Yeah. It doesn't change that it happened.
It doesn't change the fact that it happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Like two things can be true. The dude is absolutely the football player by saying, come hell or high water, I'm staying on the field. But it also doesn't change the fact that you can't run at full speed when only one of your ankles is working. Okay? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not sorry. Okay? Like it's like it's just a fact. And I think that's what the problem you have with some of these players. And it's no different from some of these other guys that you see other teams moving off from. And I know that's not what you want to hear either. But, But look.
After moving off of Keenan Allen, man, listen, everything is on the table at this point.
But this is my point, which is he is a great dude to maybe coach up a young guy that comes in after him.
Oh, absolutely. Okay? Yes.
So you basically say, dude, you're going to be a coach's player. You're going to be the guy that's going to.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, like we're guaranteeing you 2 years. Okay, You're gonna draft a guy this year. You're gonna coach this dude up, and then we're moving on after you for 2 years. But we guarantee you a roster spot. Are you cool with that? Thanks. Bye. Sit down, shut up, and let's play.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. If I was a Chargers fan, I'd be fine with that. Yeah. I would rather have an elite player work alongside my safeties coach and trade up 2 or 3 dudes on my team and pass along all that knowledge that he has in his head, knowing that he's got a guaranteed roster spot and is willing to coach guys. I'd be cool with that.
That's what I was hoping Keenan was supposed to be. He was supposed to be the guy where the young receiver comes in. He's like, all right, young buck, here's how you do it.
He wanted some money because he knows that he's at the back in his career, right?
And he just came off a career year.
He came off a career year and took a discount for your team, and your team still tried to have him take money off. And that's
I should preface it by saying I got nothing against Keenan. He did it what was in the best interest for him. Never going to fault a player for that.
So that's going to about conclude the show, guys, though. I think we've covered a lot on the show. Alex, I really appreciate you and I collaborating together on this stuff and you giving your insight from a legal side, U.S. law in particular, because that's where I'm obviously a little weaker on in terms of my personal piece. But because I'm basically a American, I do have some knowledge in terms of the U.S. law a little bit as well. But really do appreciate your direct insight, and also it impacts your team. So you're going to have a vested interest to make sure you have a little bit more knowledge into the situation. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude the show for the 3 of us here and Captain Jack, who did make a cameo appearance there for a little bit there. Captain, hope you're having fun. Have a drink for me. I appreciate it. But ladies and gentlemen, next week, we're going to start getting a little bit deeper into the draft. Your questions, your comments, your everything to do with draft. We want those questions brought for next week. And ladies and gentlemen, where the West Side is the best side, we will see you next week. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute.